Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's a rainy Monday in Buffalo. And, well, of course, all bad things happen in Buffalo, except the Buffalo Bandits, right, Russ?
Yes. Most successful team in Buffalo ever.
Yeah, no.
No? Who's better?
The Bills. They won an AFL championship in 1960.
Have a ring?
Yeah, they have an AFL ring, an AFL championship.
Wow. Have you ever seen one?
No, I think most of the people from that team are dead. So
okay. I rest my case.
It's like this. It's like the '67 Leafs, Russ. They're,
Kowski is alive. He managed my softball a couple years ago.
Was it something that we were talking about? Whether the Leafs would win a cup before any of the '67 players were still living? And I said yes, they would.
I said no.
Yeah, Russ said no. He's the Grim Reaper, but we know that from his rest in peace stuff. So start us off with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So I was watching again the Food That Built America, and this one was loosely based on food, but it was an interesting story. And I'm pretty sure, even though you're a historian, you're not going to know this one. So the Ford Motor Company obviously did a lot of different things in the United States, but at one point they actually invented the charcoal briquette. And they tried to put that along with like this little grill. When I mean little, like I have a little hibachi one in the garage that runs off of like whatever gas that is. And that thing's double the size of the one they showed. It looked like it looked like a Barbie grill almost. Like you could fit like 2 lamb chops.
Like an easy bake oven type.
Yeah, it really was like that. And they marketed that like as a picnic thing. And it didn't take off. And then, of course, the Great Depression happened, but you know who one of it, and I didn't get to the point where I need to get to yet in the show. But spoiler alert: a guy named Kingsford was one of his best friends.
There you go.
But the whole thing was born out of the fact that Ford was annoyed that he was throwing away so much wood for his cars. After they trimmed it off, they had all this extra wood, and they didn't do anything with it.
Right.
So, it was an interesting thing. And then the other part of this show was Oscar Mayer. Now, we've been down that road before. The only change for me is this is bad. In like the early 1900s, if you walked into the butcher shop, those hot dogs were just in like a big pickle tub, like the same thing that pickles are in.
Yeah.
And just loose in water. And it's like, oh.
Well, okay, let's go there because when I go to Yankee Stadium, and this is the only place that I've been to, and I'm sure there are other ones, but we were at Wrigley Field last year, and we were in Detroit. And
hold on, Danby said this, and I didn't even get this. Ford is the Ford in Kingsford. That's pretty good, but the guy's name was Kingsford too.
Oh, okay, okay, I didn't know that. But in terms of hot dogs, like we went to Wrigley Field, normal regular hot dog cooked on a grill. Same thing for Detroit. At Yankee Stadium, if you buy it at the regular concession stand, it's a grilled hot dog, and they have it on the rollers in the background. But there are stands, and I'm sure probably this is the same at where the Mets play. You have an independent hot dog vendor that has the hot dogs boiling, and I will not eat those. Hot dog boiling, you got the hot dog water. It's disgusting. I mean,
the specials are the ones you boil because they're the big ones.
Yeah,
they take too long if you grill them. So we would boil the specials, but I wouldn't boil any other hot dog. But here's the other interesting thing, Mike. So apparently, Carl Meyer from Oscar Mayer. And his uncle was Oscar, which is really funny. It just seems stupid, right? Like all these years later when you see the story. But the thing is, the way they got away from having all these hot dogs just kind of thrown in this big casket in the butcher shop was they just put a ring around it, the yellow ring that they have that says like, it's grade A or it's good. And people believed it. And it's like seriously, it's a hot dog. Right. Like you already know, like there were reports. Upton Sinclair did a book, what was it? The Jungle. It was already talked about what was in a hot dog. Like it was, everybody knew. So really putting this little ring around it was going to make people think that it was better for you.
Much better. A fun way to cook a hot dog is to just put the hot dog into a roll, wrap it up in a paper towel, put it in the microwave oven for 90 seconds.
Yeah,
I
imagine that's
it works like a charm.
Because you don't have to wait. It does the same thing that the boiling does, and you don't.
Yeah, and it's done. I mean, it's not like it's a quick way to do it. The rolls form. It's nice. It's not a bad deal. So it's like you get a pretty good hot dog. It's not as good as
I mean, it would be a veggie dog, but that's fine.
Yeah, but whatever. It's like it is quick and painless.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good.
We have done that for sure.
Now, I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and this does not mean I am promoting the new movie that's coming out, but it did make me think about where I was and how many times I saw the original Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Because it came out 42 years ago, which makes me feel really friggin' old. 42 years ago today. So that's 1981, and I remember, in the summer going to see it multiple times because that's how much I liked the movie. But yeah, and this is not an endorsement of the fifth one, which I keep seeing the preview for this one, Russ, and it's like, they can't, he's too old to have a romantic interest. So the girl from Fleabag is, I believe, the niece of the guy who was the assistant in the first movie, Denholm Elliott's. I mean, it's like his granddaughter, basically.
Somebody told me Harrison Ford did the stunt coming out of the plane, and I'm like, really? Like, George Bush used to do those jumps every year, right?
Yeah, but he had a guy from the Airborne Rangers as a tandem guy.
So you're not going to believe Harrison Ford did that alone? No, maybe from like 10 feet, and they did the rest with trickery. I don't believe it. But
they do. They did a lot of. I heard. Maybe I'm not sure. I heard him interviewed on. I think it was Colbert a while back for this because he also had that other show that's on. I haven't been able to get into it yet. That's on HBO. Called. It's something about it's with the guy from How I Met Your Mother, Jason Segel. I can't think of what it's called.
Oh, but anyway, I heard about that. It's not on HBO. It's on Apple TV.
On Apple TV, sorry, yeah. So anyway, I heard him, and he said that that they can actually do it, so they can make him look as young as they want to now. Which is, and there are parts of the movie where they actually done that, where they made him look a lot younger than he is. It's crazy, It's
stunt for an 81-year-old guy is getting out of bed. Like that's a stunt.
I mean,
I'm 56 and I have that problem.
I'm sure he's sharp as a tack still. He does seem like he's really on top.
No, he's good. I mean, he's really good for his age.
Callista Flockhart will do that for you.
But I'll tell you what struck me from the Indiana Jones movie. It wasn't so much like we had seen things like this before. A guy in a leather jacket with a hat looking for artifacts. It's not like that was new. None of that was new. But the John Williams music was really friggin' catchy, man.
Yeah.
And that's what really got you was that
Harrison.
John Williams was on a crazy streak back then of writing these just movie after movie after movie after movie.
Every Lucas and Spielberg movie, but Harrison Ford came out during some sort of award ceremony and said that they played the Indiana Jones music in the operating room when he was having a colonoscopy. He hears that music every place he goes.
But it's amazing because that really is iconic from a music standpoint. And for me, that's what really grabbed me first, even before that, because at that point you didn't know who Harrison Ford really was.
Right.
No, Star Wars. It was before or after Star Wars.
Was it after? I thought it was just at the same.
No, it was after. It was after. But he was still like
you did know. I thought it was just.
I mean, but it was still like
it was his only movie.
It was pretty impressive because to do anything else after Star Wars.
Well,
that was as big as that. That was
potentially only Star Wars at that time.
He wasn't a superstar at this point, but he was in the George Lucas movie with Ron Howard and Dreyfuss. I can't drawing a.
American Graffiti.
He was in American Graffiti. He
had a mediocre part in that.
Right. He had a small part. He was in Apocalypse Now, and he had a small part. But his big movie was Star Wars, and that came. I think that came after the first Star Wars movie.
All right, so he was a decent star at that point.
Decent star at that point.
Well, he was a big star, but that was why it was even more impressive. Like it's not like the guy who played Luke Skywalker, Hamill. It's not like. It's not like he found another role nearly to the level of Indiana Jones.
Actually, All That Summer was the movie he did, and that was really good.
It was good, but it wasn't like Indiana Jones.
It wasn't at that level.
And then another franchise,
Space Up.
Russ,
That's where Hamill got into
I'll
an accident. Hold on. That's where Hamill got into an accident and had to get plastic surgery.
I'll test your trivia knowledge here before we start the show. Who was supposed to be Indiana Jones, but ended up not getting the role?
I've heard this, but I don't know what it is.
A famous television actor who is still on TV today.
Bruce Selleck?
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck, Bruce Selleck.
That's good because I was going to say Dom DeLuise.
Tom Selleck. Okay,
Tom Selleck, all of you out there remember from Friends. Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And my mother loves him in Blue Bloods, and I would never watch it.
Yes. Great movie.
Friends, which we jokingly say is like a newer thing that Tom Selleck did, is extremely old too at this point. So it's kind of like crazy.
No, I mean,
I'm not a fan of his reverse mortgage commercials.
He's still on TV. Listen, I'm not a fan of him stealing water and to water his almond farm either that he got caught with and got a small fine.
Yeah.
When California was going through water problems. But hey, it's Tom Selleck. It's okay.
Yeah. All right, let's get going here. We got stuff. We got 27 players on the rumor chart updated. We have things. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, June 12th, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello, and you're not.
I was going to sing Money for Nothing, like we got to move those refrigerators and whatever since we got stuff, but I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and I don't sing. I don't.
My Hockey Buzz. All right. And you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes, Jonah Mecklin, by the way. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I think we have you guys were at the combines. We also have the Stanley Cup final to talk about. We have my rumors on the rumor chart. We have the draft coming up. Draft and combines are kind of the same. Let's start, I guess, with the Stanley Cup final. Kind of get that done because it's. I mean, what are the odds? What are the chances now, Mike, to you that Vegas wins this?
In 5, you mean
tomorrow? Or no, just wins the Stanley Cup.
Oh, I'd say about 90%.
90%, okay.
95%. I don't think Florida is done like dinner, but if Tkachuk is as injured as the indications are out there, then it's Bobrovsky would have to have a 3 games for the ages. And I'll just say this because Russ and I were watching this on Saturday night. The melee that Montour started by charging in and hitting Brady McNabb at the buzzer, after they almost tied it, and then Tkachuk, with the stick on Pietrangelo and slashing. I mean, it was absolutely disgraceful. I'm shocked that there hasn't even been a fine. There hasn't been anything mentioned at all in terms of supplementary justice.
Yeah, it was honestly, was a bad look. It was a really bad look for a guy who we were giving a lot of plaudits during the playoffs with all these game-winning goals, and his game really just sunk into the toilet. Every game leading, that moved on into the Stanley Cup practically to try and win the cup. And that's fine. That's part of the game, but that was really ugly.
Yeah, it was. It was very old school, very old school.
It was.
And I mean, so we watched that game. Game 4 we watched on the beach. I set up a projector, and I do this sometimes, and a big screen out on the beach, and we watched on the beach with a bunch of people walking down the beach, hanging out with us, watching the game. And a lot of people were saying this kind of thing that they liked the Florida Panthers because they remind them of the Flyers from way back, and they kind of do. They definitely have a Flyers like feel to them. Yeah, Tkachuk is definitely like a Tocchet type player or what have you, and he just. They don't go down without a fight ever. They are this way. This is what they do. They fight people.
It's funny. There's one thing to go down without a fight, right? Yeah. But then there's another thing to just be like, okay, live for another day. You're the better team that day. Have a little bit of sportsmanship, just a little.
Yeah.
That's my issue. I was brought up with some sportsmanship. Like, hey, you may not like that guy, but if he beats you, go over and shake his hand.
I agree. I don't disagree with that at all.
Right. I mean, and okay, they will shake hands when
some will. Sometimes the guys skip it too.
But I think Tkachuk will. I mean, but the thing is, I just think that the way, and we know that like after the whistle, I can't remember what I think it was Keegan Colasar. after the whistle during the game comes down with both hands with the stick on somebody's wrists, and that kind of stuff. That stuff is ridiculous. But I just think that there was an ugly look.
Yeah.
To what was a pretty entertaining game, and
it was. I really felt like Florida was going to tie that. I mean, you've seen that script so many times, right? So it really felt like they were going to come back and tie that game.
I mean, Mike and I took a minute to not eat our pizza that we were sharing to actually say this is really bad. Like,
really?
Yeah, we paused.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is bad, but it also is not unexpected from the way Florida. Like Florida, this is part of Florida's MO is they are a tough team. They are.
They are. But if I was on the other side, I'd be like to Kachuk, is this all you got left? Because I'm pretty sure he's broken down anyhow.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. He up until the last 4 or 5 minutes of the third period, I think the reporters were commenting that he had only played 2 shifts in the third period. So something is going on.
He's like the Black Knight at this point.
Yeah. No, but
if you don't know it, go look it up.
But he's struggling with injury. Gudis is struggling with injury. That's what you do now at this point of the season. You just you shoot up or you tape things or whatever. But they're not deep enough that they can have players who are key players who have been key players, especially Kachuk. He's their leading scorer and their leader. They can't afford to not have those guys at 100%, and that's why I think Vegas is going to finish them off on Tuesday.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Russ? What percentage do you think that Vegas wins Tuesday and then wins the series? We should say
97%.
They win on Tuesday. Okay, that's
because there's no pressure on them in front of their whole crowd. That crowd loves them. It's going to be totally positive vibe in town. Their practices will be full.
I know.
Will be full. Florida's beat up, so it's 97% because Bob may be able to shut them down, but that's it.
Yeah. I mean, Bob is an interesting one in this series because you're seeing what they're doing is they really are having so much success getting in front of him and screening him that it's very obvious that Bob's size is playing a factor in the series. The fact that he's smaller, he's not unable to see over guys.
Defense has to do you some favors with that, and defense again has not been doing them any favors defensively. We talk about their offense, and Ekblad's rock solid on defense, but they don't have enough rock solid guys. They don't.
Yeah, and the size of the Vegas blue line, which I talked about earlier in the series, which I thought was going to be sort of a determining factor. I mean, really, it's been. I mean, you've got White Cloud, you've got Haig, and then you've got the guys who are the top end and Theodore and Petrangelo. Their defense is just too deep, too big, and too good.
Too old. Oh, I was going to say for Florida, it's too old too because. Like Mark Stahl, I have all the respect in the world for him, but he's just like an old lumberjack.
He's doing everything he can out there, obviously. So is Gudis.
There's not much left. I mean, when you're lumping 20+ minutes on him constantly, and we thought he was done. I mean, he played well, but we thought he was done when he was playing with Detroit. And you've got. Because Kachuk is limited, you've got Eric Stahl playing 15, 16 minutes a night. His minutes are elevated because they have to fill in when Kachuk can't play. That's going to take a toll too.
And he's been great too. I mean, and it's interesting. Both the Stahls have been
playing 15 minutes. Zach.
I know that, but both Stahls have stepped up. They have. I mean, there's no question about that. They both.
Eric Stahl got a big goal, and that's probably more than they thought he would do.
Yeah, I mean, and he's also been really good defensively.
He has been good defensively. That's
turned himself into quite a defensive player, and which is really, really kind of fascinating.
But he should stop playing too, though, because at some point, he's got a potential Hall of Fame career, and you don't want to be on your last fumes when you go out because there's a lot of competition, in the Hall of Fame to begin with.
Well, he's got Corey Perry disease right now, Russ. He's been on 2 Cup finalists in his last 2 seasons, but they can't finish. He was on Montreal.
He's got a cup, so that's what I'm saying.
I know, but I'm saying these guys they want to finish off their career with one more. Sure. Perry keeps going. He goes to Tampa, he goes to Montreal, he goes to Dallas. He was in Cup finals, I think 3 years in a row, and couldn't get that.
Like I've been picturing. Here's what I've been picturing. Mm-hmm. I've been picturing the day where the 3 Stahl brothers all meet up at a diner, and Jared says, "I've been waiting for this day. I've been waiting
You're like,
to join me in regular life again."
Right.
I'm gonna say they go to the diner, and Jared would say, "Would you like fries with that?" Now let me ask you.
Come on.
Sorry about that.
I mean, I'm going to just finish this up. I'm going to be a little bit lighter. I'm going to be a little bit lighter on not finish it off completely, but just to say like that I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic with Florida than you guys are. I mean, I think that my feeling is that Vegas has about a 90% chance of finishing it Tuesday night, like you do. However, if they don't win that game, I go back to about like 60%. Like I think that it becomes really close if
it goes back to Florida, and then the pressure.
If Florida can get that game from them. I mean, remembering that Dallas, took it from 3-0 to 3-2, and of course this team came back from 3-1 on Boston. So it's hard to sit there and say 97% to me. Like this
Well,
is
it's not hard for me. I'll tell you why. The way Florida won was because Barbashev hit the post. Had he hit the post in that game, this series would have been a sweep. There's no question in my mind, and that gave Florida some life. But otherwise, every game has sort of played out exactly the way Vegas wanted to, except for that one. So I don't believe now that Florida can flip the script.
Now, game one, Russ, you could say the same thing about all the posts that Florida hit. I mean, that
was deeper in the series. Game one
could have easily gone the other way too. So I mean, that's like that. Both of those games, they each kind of lost the game they shouldn't have lost. Really, honestly.
I won't argue that, but I think Bob is their only chance, and I can't give him much of a chance.
Now, the one thing I'm interested in now, if Vegas does finish it off on Tuesday, is the Conn Smythe. Early in the series, I think it would have been no doubt it would have been Eichel, but now I think Marchessault is the leading candidate because he's the leading goal scorer and the leading point getter. Now he wouldn't be able to score those goals had it not been Eichel setting him up. I think
let's be fair though. I mean, there was a visionary out there, me, that before the series began for SiriusXM, I picked Vegas as the winner and I picked Marchessault as the MVP, as the Conn Smythe. But so did McKern. So he said he did too.
That immediately we can just ignore it then.
But the thing is, it is something where I saw it. You can't say you didn't see it coming because going into the Cup, Marchessault was hot as a firecracker and was scoring the big goals. So yes, is Eichel helping him? Sure, but Marchessault scores goals without Jack Eichel hasn't been the only reason Marchessault is scoring goals.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Eichel is assisted on 85% of Marchessault's goals.
I get that.
In line. That's why.
Yeah, but Eichel looks beat up too.
Yeah,
there's no doubt he is.
Eichel. I mean, first of all, he came back from the Kachuk hit, and then he takes a shot off the side of the head from Marchessault and came back. So, I mean,
that was scary close to his neck, where his neck injury was too. That was what really kind of freaked me out about that ankle injury. I was like, oh, geez, that was really close to that. I'm still not a believer in Aiden Hill, 100%. 100%.
You don't have to be. Like, I don't think that's the good thing about this. I don't think any of us have to be believers in Aiden Hill. We just have to believe during this stretch of time, this is the best hockey he's ever played in his life. I'm not giving him a 3-year contract next year. No way.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, and I still feel as if there's a chance there that they could get to Quinn and get to Aiden Hill, not Aiden Quinn. I went to Aiden Quinn there. How about that?
He gives up one goal every game where they do get to him, but the problem with Florida is they can't get past Vegas's defense.
Last game though, Russ, in the last 2 periods of the last game was the first time, and I'm watching on the beach. I'm talking to my buddies there, and I'm like, this is the first time that Florida was breaking through that defense. And they were breaking them apart because that defense was such a solid wall of like.
Yeah, but it was late in the game, and it was
the last 2 periods. They really were. They were starting.
I don't think it was 2 periods. I think it was the last period. I think
it was desperation in the third after the Barkov goal.
No, it was after 3-0 lead for sure. But the fact that they could do that.
Wait. That goal by Montour was the biggest luck goal.
It was pinball
in the history of the world. It went off 2 guys' legs.
That's what if you do that enough, you're going to score on Aiden because he's just Aiden Hill's out all the time.
That's a once in a lifetime thing. That doesn't happen all the time.
I don't know why once in a lifetime. I mean, this series
off of 2 legs.
I mean, off of 2 legs, yes, but but bounces off. I mean, if you throw, they need to be throwing the puck at the net on Aiden Hill.
Yeah,
they need to be throwing it low too because that is like, And two things about him. But as a goalie, I just get very frustrated by him overcommitting. But I do also really notice that he holds his glove super low, which is like, now he's a tall goalie, so low for him is probably
low for him is still pretty
where
high.
the glove usually is. But that does give an opportunity. He does leave a lot of the open upper net, and Panthers are starting to hit that spot. They are starting to realize that because
they're not really that much. I mean, how many goals have they scored in this series?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Mike, you have the stat?
Seems like some of the ones that I've scored have been there. That's all I'm saying.
I'll look it up. Fine.
Okay. Well, we can figure it out pretty quickly, right? They got But someone in the chat room will find out for us in a second, or you can find out, Russ. But I don't think it's going to be. I mean, Vegas is better. They're a better team. There's no question about it. I picked them and all that stuff. But I just there's something about the Florida team, the way they find ways to win, that I'm not willing at all.
I don't disagree with that, Act. But the thing is, I think the wear and tear on them has, they got that long rest, and I think they were a little bit rusty, but not totally so. But the weight that Vegas has put on their key players. I mean, Bennett is not a factor the way he was in the first 3 rounds. Reinhart, I don't believe, has a goal. But Barkov has been limited. Kachuk is hurt. Gudis is. I mean, their best player.
Oh yeah,
their best player in this series has been Brandon Montour.
They have 9 goals.
Yeah, their best player has been Brandon Montour.
9 goals in 4 games.
Yeah,
Golden Knights scored 7 in one game, 5 in another. Like, it's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're
talking about Aiden Hill. Like,
no, but I mean, that's the thing. If you score 7, if they give up 7 or 5 goals, yeah, you're not going to beat Aiden Hill. I mean, that's the reality. Is you're not going to beat anybody.
I don't think Aiden Hill is Ilya Sorokin or Connor Hellebuck.
Listen,
he's been good enough to win these games, and he's
more than good enough. Hold on. I noticed that before the series began, Aiden Hill had a better save percentage than Bob. He did.
Yeah. Right, but that's because he only played a few games.
He didn't play the teams that Bob.
Right, but the thing is here, okay.
Well, the save percentage does matter with the skill level.
Yes.
I mean, with Boston and Toronto, the save percentage is a lot different than playing Seattle or whatever. It's like,
I mean, somebody had this. He had an 860 some odd save percentage against Boston. Well, he only played 3 games, and the one game was 6-5. I mean, those stats can be misleading. But what I'm saying here is Aiden Hill. I mean, he made the save, 2 saves at the end of regulation to save that game. He's not. He
did. I'm not taking that away from him. I'm just saying that we haven't seen Florida get a lead. It was like a 2-goal lead.
And I don't think we're going to because Vegas's defense has been so over.
And also because Vegas's obvious strategy is to come out and just fire on all cylinders like the game's going to end in 10 minutes. Like the first 10 minutes of each game, they are firing. And they've been doing that since the last game of the Dallas series. Like the last game of the Dallas series, this has been their style.
Wearing them down. They're physical. They're big. They're wearing Florida down.
But if you can withstand that, like Florida kind of did in the last game. I mean, they gave them 3 goals, okay, but they withstood the beginning of it. There is a point at which Vegas starts to look like the tired team, and you saw it. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Let's move on from there. We'll see. Well, we have that game tomorrow. We can talk about more.
Talk about the combine.
Let's talk about the combine. You guys were at the combine. What's it like for people who've never been there? What's the whole deal? What's this? How does it play out? And is it media friendly? How's it work?
It's very media friendly. You do get to speak to a lot of guys that you might not catch up with at the draft because you might have more of a schedule at the draft where you're going to cover the team, and so you're going after those teams' picks, and you might be writing in between. The interviews are the most important thing. And that's what the teams are there for. A lot of teams left early this year. A lot of teams,
yes.
By the time the guys were doing their testing, but for real, like to get, put in the books, I would say 20 teams or more were gone. But they did see the guys practicing the testing the last couple of days, and they interviewed them, and that's a big thing.
Yeah. Those teams did their interview because the media days were Friday and Saturday. The combine was from the 4th to the 10th. So those teams that did interviews with those players or talked to people or whatever, they did it before the media was there. So I
do have one stat also before we move on. With the combine, I just found this. Aiden Hill has a .955 save percentage versus the Panthers in his career.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
chew on that for a while. Anyway,
No, that's impressive. But Russ, just the eye test, man. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm just saying this is a stat that I didn't even think
Taking
I'm
the
not the only one saying it too. Like there's
hey,
Hockey Night in Canada, they talk about it all the time, and they're talking about like and I really think the Hockey Night Canada crew is the same kind of feeling that I have that this could turn quickly because there's a goalie on one side that's pretty spectacular, a goalie on the other side that's pretty lucky right now.
Yeah, Mitchkov wasn't
that's
there.
what could change.
Yeah, Mitchkov wasn't there, and neither were any of the big Russians. They had trouble gaining passports and all those things. I think we'll see some of them at the draft, but we might not see any of them. It's not a guarantee.
Yeah, but and Dan Marr, who's the scouting director for the league, said that they invited them, but that the issues of getting visas were made the situation difficult. The thing I think that we learned, I mean, and I'm going to write about this, is the fact that in this draft, this is not a very defense-heavy draft, at least at the top of the draft. There's, like I was talking with Russ before we went live here, there are maybe at most 2 defensemen who could go in the top 10. It's more than likely 1. And that's unusual because in this league we're defense, and we're seeing how valuable defense is based on like some of the trades that we're seeing for Provorov, for Severson. I mean, David Reinbacher is the only one that I think is, I'd say 85 to 90% going to go in the top 10s at some point. He could go as high as 5. He could go to 6, Arizona at 6. He could go to Philly at 7.
I don't even think he's the best defenseman in this draft.
Right, and that's the thing. What came out before and during the combine is like, well, he's got a little more cider to him. No, I mean, I think he's a good defenseman. Russ knows a lot more about him than I do. But when you start to get the comparables, and this is a thin draft in terms of at the top of the draft what defense is, then you start to reach, and that's where you get burned.
We are gonna, his offense isn't anywhere near Siders. Could it get there? Maybe because guys can develop. But
was there anybody who was the big surprise? Who's the big surprise in this thing?
Well, hold on. Before we do the surprise, the big thing is what we're going to see is once there's a run on defenseman, wherever that might fall, and it might be twice in like the first round, guys are just going to go because it's going to be like you don't want to be the last one who doesn't get the Furby at Christmas time. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's going to. That's what it's going to be, and so that is going to elevate some guys. I would tell you the biggest surprise for me, and I just saw it, was that Axel Sandin Pellikka, who people probably want to marginalize because he's 5'11" and isn't tough, pound for pound was the strongest guy on the weight bench. And there were some guys there with arms out to here.
Yeah,
pound for pound. You got to remember that.
Well, I mean, the one guy, and this guy wasn't there were very few. In general, Bedard is not a big kid. Fantilli is. Carlson is pretty decent size, but I would say most of the first round were under forwards were under 6 foot. And one kid, Gavin Brindley, who impressed me. He's 5'9" and 170 pounds, but the guy was ripped. So it's like, and he was very strong. So like a guy like that, even though he's a small of stature, some of these players, they play against bigger players all the time, and they know how to neutralize players with size. So sometimes those players, their size is sort of misleading.
Yeah, and look, I agree with Matt. I think Pellikka is better than Reinbacher, but teams are definitely back in this mode that if they could get big and physical, they're thinking that the rest will happen and they're going to talk themselves into it no matter what. Yeah. And so what Mike said is mostly true, except I do think towards the bottom of the first round, some of these bigger guys are going to get drafted because teams want bigger guys.
They'll reach. They should be drafting the more talented, smaller guy, but there still is that prejudice. I mean,
we're gonna see quite a bit of that. There are going to be a lot of smaller guys drafted. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. And like one guy, as an example, Luca Cagnoni, who plays in the Dub, as a 5'10" defenseman. Now, he gave the best answer as to how he can cover the bigger guys, and it wasn't even with leverage. He said, "I just take away their hands." So he basically is telling you he's going to slash them. He's going to do whatever he can to get the puck away from them, and that's what the smaller defenseman has to do. Now, there aren't that many small defensemen in the league right now.
Right.
I still do project in the future there's going to be more. So you can't be a team that's sort of set in your ways and say, we don't want to take this guy simply because you don't believe there's enough small defensemen today, because we're really talking about 4 years from now, not today.
Yeah, and I think the thing that like I said, I'll write about this as well. The Mishkov thing is definitely a factor here because he wasn't there. Most teams have scouts over in Russia who have had a chance to look at him, but the ability to get him over here is definitely going to be a determining factor. Again, he's one of these guys. He could go as high as 5 to Montreal, but I do think that the fact that unknown of whether, I mean, we saw some report during the weekend, well, he's never going to come. I think that's horse crap.
An anonymous scout said that. And look, I use anonymous scout stuff too, but whoever that anonymous scout is, he's crazy.
Well, no, I think that
come over.
I think
maybe
with that,
from the future.
No, I think that anonymous what that was, Russ, is like, we want him, so we're gonna put that out there so someone can pass on him so he falls.
Right.
He might never come here.
Right. No, he's going to come. I still think the Sharks, even though they're not talking him up, will seriously consider him because they do need the offense, and it depends if they want to wait. I think that's going to be the big thing for them. But if the Sharks are saying they're going to pass on Michkov because somebody's actually better or has a better offensive game at 4, there's no justification for it.
Yeah, no. I think the draft starts at 4. I think it's it's going to be in whatever order. Bedard will be number 1. It'll be Bedard, Fantilli, and Carlson 1, 2, 3, and then what the Sharks do at 4 is where it starts. It's probably going to be Will Smith, but we don't know. I mean, you could see something like what happened in the Matthews draft, where Puljujarvi was supposedly the one that was going to go 3rd, and Yarmo takes Pierre-Luc Dubois at 3. Right. So you don't know what the internal.
I mean, Matthew Wood's a wild card. He could end up going in the 10th, in that 10 spot, and
sure.
And that wouldn't shock me. He's a big kid. He's still growing. He's 6'4". He's still growing.
Yeah.
So he grew this year, as an example, and he's a big guy, and he was the youngest guy in college hockey.
I think, who was he? Which one of you guys said that the Ovechkin factor with the Russian players is something you do have to consider?
Sure. I mean,
we both said it because he definitely could call his buddy on the red phone, and in a year or 2 get Michkov over here if they're lucky enough to draft him. So no, that's a fact. Couple other things. So people can go to sportsology.com and look at my article. It's not a lot of content, but what it is a lot of is how many teams guys spoke to and who they spoke to. Yeah. So as an example, for all the Islander fans that bash me, Stefan Rosner just did an article and used my article for the guys that said that the Islanders spoke to him. Yeah. And so I really hated the Islanders. I would never mention them on my website. So I want to point that out.
It's just what they expect you to do, Russ.
The biggest thing is, and this was amazing to me, two things. So Tom Willander, who's a talented defenseman in this draft, 30 teams spoke to him. 30.
Wow. 30.
Nobody knows exactly where he's going to go. And I got that confirmation. There's a guy, Grayson Sawchin, who's a smaller center, played with Seattle, and I think he had 29 teams.
Yeah.
And so Mike was like, "Yeah, I'm not even going to ask you the next question."
Yeah, I was going to ask him, well, did you talk to Toronto? Did you talk to Buffalo? Like, you talked to 29 teams. It's easier to ask him what teams you didn't talk to. But the thing was, I got the feeling that most teams were taking a shotgun approach to this. They were talking to everybody, even if, Toronto has 3 picks in this draft, a 1st, a 5th, and a 6th. And I don't know what, I think there were maybe 2 of the 20 prospects that I was in the scrum with that said they didn't talk to Toronto. So they talked to, now maybe that's in anticipation of them getting more picks, or maybe they're just doing their due diligence, but they talked to everybody. Yeah,
I would say this. This was the funny part, So after the 29 teams, I said to Sawchin, it seems like teams don't know where you're going to go. And he goes, that's true. And he goes, honestly, I don't know where I'm going to go either.
Right.
In this draft. Like, he said that.
Right.
That's really good.
So some players like you just know. Sure. And then there's a lot of players in this draft because there is a lot of talent. you really don't know where they're going to fall. I'll answer this question from the chat room, and you guys were asked it too. Where do they think Oliver Bonk's going to fall in the first round? I wouldn't take him in the first round, so that's my answer.
Yeah, no,
Radek Bunk's
son, and he was interviewed because he had longer hair, and apparently he had just had his hair cut because his dad didn't like the longer. He said he had with longer hair because it was sort of an homage to his dad, and his
his dad had long hair, so I was thinking about right. Yeah. That's really that's kind of what he was famous for. Radek Bunk, that's a good name in the past.
Yeah, no,
his kid's okay. I don't see enough offense. I don't see enough defense, so I take him in the second round.
Yeah. Was there a buzz player that that everybody was like, oh, that guy, like that kind of thing?
A buzz player. Well, I think
not. I mean, besides the normal guys, but like, there's usually somebody who's like.
So you're saying just from this day, like
from this day, like you heard it, suddenly might push himself in the first round, perhaps, or something.
I'll give you one because and Russ can. Andrew Cristal was talked about a lot by Connor Bedard because they're young, they're friends in terms of his skill level, and we were debating the possibility of maybe because Chicago has multiple first round picks, including one, I think, like 19, Russ?
Yeah.
That if Cristal is there, that they might draft him because he's Bedard's best buddy and they played before he went to Regina. So that that was a guy that sort of there was an underlying little bit of buzz.
Yeah, and I would say also with Matthew Wood, because he called him, he said that people now this was the thing he said. People are calling me a unicorn. Now, I've not seen anybody write that in the press.
Right.
He said that
people call me that all the time, Russ. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
Anyway. But that's scout talk, that means some teams probably think that he's a unicorn because of his size and the way he shoots. But his skating needs a lot of work, and he actually it is a deficit when you're growing and you're trying to like hone your skills. It's hard.
But being that the combine was in Buffalo and there were a lot of Buffalo reporters, and Wood is in Connecticut, which is the same place that Tage Thompson went to. Right. So there was a lot of Tage Thompson comparisons. And
there shouldn't be. They're different players.
They're different players. But the thing is that, there was the talk that, well, he's somebody because of his skating, because of his size, that it could take a longer window for him to reach the level, which is the same thing with Tage. But Tage Thompson was sort of like everything fell into place after 5 years of hopping from St. Louis to Buffalo, having injuries and everything. Everything just fell into place. And I don't think you can – that's why I hate comparables, because comparables are lazy.
Yeah, the thing about Wood, too, is because I interviewed him during the winter, and he's not playing center at UConn. And so if he doesn't play center in another year at UConn, he's probably going to be a winger. And so then you have to kind of figure out, is that what you want in the top 10? Now, if you think he's going to play center, then you might put him in the top 10. So that's why he's a bit of a wild card and definitely got some buzz.
Did anybody besides the Russian players not show up and they probably should have?
There was a couple.
Well, it's hard to say why a player wasn't there. Like there's a goalie, Jacob Fowler, who was with the Youngstown Phantoms, won goalie of the year in the USHL, won a championship. He interviewed with the teams, but he wasn't there to talk or there to exercise either. Now, the top 4 picks, like Bedard worked out, but not all of them worked out, but they still spoke.
Fantilli and Carlson did not work out.
But they still were there to interview, right, for the people that had So maybe something happened with Fowler. He got sick, but that was a guy who I was specifically looking for that wasn't there, that I was surprised that wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because you could be the second, third goalie off the board.
Right. And by the way, this unicorn thing is like the new thing in hockey. It's like Matthew Tkachuk, I think, is the leading one. It's like Matthew Tkachuk is the unicorn that everybody is saying he's the unicorn. You don't see these kind of players all the time.
One of the interesting things, and I wasn't able to talk to him, but Gabriel Perreault, who's the son of Yannick Perreault, his dad was drafted at the draft in Buffalo in 1991. I was at that draft, and he was the first pick of the Leafs in the 3rd round. And it's weird that I'm going to be at the draft in Nashville, that he's going to get drafted probably in the 1st round. But it was Russ, I don't think Callum Ritchie there. I don't think he was there.
I didn't notice Callum Ritchie. That's a good one. I never saw him. So, but again, you never know what it is. It could be a visa. Like Dan Morris said, guys were having trouble obtaining visas last minute. Like
Really?
and it wasn't just for the Russian ones, I guess. Even if you're coming from Canada, I mean,
but it shouldn't be last minute. I mean, they know they have this ahead of time. I mean, this is something they know they're going.
Yeah, I know, but you never know. Things do happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't ever know.
Yeah, remember, you play over in Canada the whole year. You forget about it. You're 18. Your parents don't remind you. Before you know it, all of a sudden, you can't get there. You'll get there for the draft, but you can't get there, right? So, it could happen.
For sure.
I will tell Flyers fans and Rangers fans that I'm in my article. I have a lot of players that they spoke to, so check it out. And
it's a really good article in Sportsology. I was gonna it's real. I was gonna talk about it. It's really perfect because I like this kind of article. It is just the facts. It's just the players and the team.
That's all it is. Yep.
Which is good because we don't need to hear anything else but that. In a situation like this, because these players, we don't know much about them anyway, and we're trying to figure out what they're all about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a perfect article for this kind of thing. I want to kind of segue into rumors a little bit because the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be. I was told by a good source. This is really interesting. Getting Connor Bedard has reversed things quickly.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So it goes they go from a rebuilding team to now calling themselves a retooling team, kind of, which is really funny because and now they're going to be involved in so many because obviously players are going to want to go play with Connor Bedard. So it's not that hard to suddenly get free agents. It changes a lot, and they could shift, and they've got a lot of money. They've got all the money in the world basically to spend on players. Could Patrick Kane return because of this? We talked about that. Will he? I do think someone's going to give Patrick Kane a shot, even though he's not going to be in there for. I think someone's going to
give him a shot, but I don't think he'll be signed during the free agent period. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think he could get a 1-year deal though from somebody for sure. I don't think he'll accept a 1-year deal. That's the funny thing.
He might because, he knows. He might not be able to get more than that, honestly.
I know, but his ego is such that I don't think, especially in the early part of free agency, there is no way he's taking a 1-year deal.
But missing half a year, it's hard to sign that. Unless if he wants to sign right away. If he wants to wait till January, maybe if he comes in and.
Well, he literally, if you get him as a team on a team, he won't be able to skate until end of the summer. Let's just use that as an example, or most of the end of the summer, which means he's not going to make the first month of the season.
Yeah, so, I think till Christmas we're not going to see him. So
so again, with that much unknown, I think teams are going to want to see him on the ice first before they spend anything because the cap's so tight.
Yeah. So, but a guy like Blake Wheeler,
he might get offers from lesser teams that he won't want to go to.
Yeah, or if it's I don't know. But it's possible. There's a lot of
scenarios. I get that.
There's a lot of scenarios with him. A lot of scenarios. Florida's one team that I think could get in on him, which would be interesting to see what happens. Maybe he thinks that's an interesting place to go because of what just happened. But let's talk about Blake Wheeler for a second too, because he's another name I just added to the chart. And there's a guy that Chicago's interested in. I was told flat out. Now
I could see that.
That does make some sense, I think. But does Blake Wheeler have anything left? Really? He really has been tough. He's really been.
There's talk of Winnipeg buying him out.
Right
now Chicago. If let's just say this, if Chicago was going to take on, I think he's 8.25. They're going to take on that salary. It's for 1 year, and they got to get to the cap floor. And he's a character guy, and maybe that's that thought process of bringing him in, having him there for a year, having some sort of support structure around Bedard. You're going to have to give Chicago probably at least the second round pick, and maybe to take on that salary. So I don't know if Kyle Davidson's in the mood of doing favors to Chicago, for Winnipeg.
Right.
I think Wheeler might have 2 good seasons left, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
On a cheap deal, could I see him going for 2 years somewhere that has a chance to win? I do. It's funny about him. I just looked him up. He was the 2004 draft. I had never seen him play a game because even back in 2004 to see high school highlights was not easy. And I remember it's like Blake Wheeler. Wow, I've never even seen this guy play. He's one of the great success stories for that. So, I think he's still got a little bit. He's definitely a leader. I know, maybe Winnipeg fans would disagree with that because they have a fractured locker room, but that's not all on him. So.
Well, I mean, the funny thing, Ak, is that the teams that we're going to concentrate on in terms of rumors, in terms of moves, two of them are Western Canada teams, Winnipeg and Calgary.
Yeah.
Elliot Friedman talked about it on Saturday, but we've been talking about Winnipeg because, okay, Hellebuck, 1 year left. It appears the reports are he's not going to sign an extension because he doesn't want to be in a rebuilding scenario in Winnipeg.
Right.
So him, Scheifele, Dubois doesn't want to be there anymore. He basically said he's not going to sign a contract, period, because he's an RFA.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's going to be big change over there. And in Calgary, I mean, half their defense is on the final year of their contract, plus guys like Backlund, plus guys like Lindholm. A lot of potential change there based on whether they want to stay there or whether they sign extensions. And if they don't, then, you know, they're going to be out there sort of like Alex DeBrincat was out there last year.
Yeah. And the most interesting name coming out of Calgary is Jonathan Huberdeau. And the crazy thing about him, you know, him possibly being traded, it's you know, it's out there. And I heard it from a couple sources and I stayed away from him. Like, that's kind of weird. But he has a full no movement clause that kicks in July 1st on the deal that he was signed with Calgary. But they weren't thrilled with him, and they weren't thrilled.
I understand why. I mean,
you know, and he still has, you know, he's just 1 year away. He's still a relatively good year, and he had 100 points 2 years ago. You know,
let me ask you: did the Canadians fall on that list?
I only have them at 10%.
I think it might be higher because they're the team that could handle the cap hit.
Yeah,
and certainly they would love him in the marketplace, and they have assets.
Yeah, they are. They do. And but so far, it seems as if they are looking more at Dubois, you know, which is weird.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just because they've been looking longer at Dubois. You know, like Huberdeau's name just came up in the last. I mean, I would rather have Huberdeau than Dubois any day of the week.
Well, no. Okay, Dubois is a center. He's a big center. He's a two-way guy. Huberdeau is a winger, and like we were talking, he's a playmaking winger. He is not not a sniper. Now, the and I don't know if you have him on the list because I didn't look at it yet, Ak, but the team that immediately popped into my mind regarding Huberdeau was Nashville because of Brunette. And they're looking to get rid of probably either Johansson or Duchesne, and they have comparable salaries. And that's the thing. The term is not as long. Remember, Huberdeau, I think he has 7 years left. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Right.
Anybody.
Oh, yeah, no, I think, and I did put Nashville on because of what you said, honestly, because I thought, you know, the rumor chart is just like a predicting thing for where it makes sense, and it does make sense. I put him at 10% as well, the Predators, because I think that does it. But the team that I hear mostly is Arizona, Huberdeau. And, you know, we've talked a lot about Arizona's situation, stuff like that, but they do have to do something to be respectable. And this would be a move that they could make where they're picking up a star type player. And, you know, and they wouldn't have to take, because Calgary doesn't want to take money back in this deal. And because Calgary has their eyes on other people. You know, like obviously. They
want to re-sign Lindholm. They want to re-sign some of their defensemen.
They actually love Ryan O'Reilly. I heard that's the name that they're looking at. So.
Well, I mean, he's been attached to Cal. Remember, they signed an offer sheet with Ryan O'Reilly back in so.
Yeah, right. I finally put Carter Hart on the rumor chart. You know, just because, and again, they're not shopping him, and everybody's been saying the same thing, which is true. But they are listening to anything. And the reality is, you know, will Carter be the goalie that they want him to be when the team is where they want to be? You know, that's the old situation. So
I think he's still going to be the goalie to start the season. I don't think they're going to be trading him now.
Yeah, I don't think they'll trade him that quickly either.
I think they looked around, they didn't get the offer they wanted, and they're going to stop now.
I would be surprised if the draft opens things up for that because the Flyers have such a desire to move up in the draft. I'm really curious about how this plays out.
Yeah, but nobody's going to see. I'll tell you where the only part I disagree on. If teams were going to do that, they would have done the trade already because it's hard for you now to say, take and my 7 for your number 5 because now this team has to all of a sudden look at Carter Hart's contract. They've got to talk about medicals. They got to do all this stuff with 3 minutes to make a deal at the draft, and I think it's a lot harder to do that.
And I think a factor, and everybody knows this, is the Hockey Canada investigation. And that might be the reason why things are on hold because once that becomes public, then you know whether some of these players that may be implicated. And I'm not saying, I don't know if Carter Hart is, but he was part of that team, and he, if he's cleared, then it's okay.
I mean, I don't think that that's a factor right now from talking to people. I've not heard anybody say that.
The only way to know is when that report comes out, and maybe these teams know already, and that's impossible. But I
do think we know a little bit about what's in that report. I do, and I think that when I've heard that, Carter Hart, you keep hearing things like, there's all this character stuff that people keep throwing out about Carter Hart, not just in Philly but everywhere. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: I don't think anybody could know, because Daly literally said before the Stanley Cup began that they just got the report from an independent person. Right. So if they did get it from an independent investigator and it was for the NHL and he just got the report, I doubt there was any leaks for that. I do.
Now, I'll just say this: I think the factor here with Hart is not that, but I think it is the fact that there is a glut in the goaltending market. If you look at Hellebuck,
not at his level, Mike. I mean,
I do think it's at his level. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I'm a team out there and I'm trading for a goaltender who is available, I would trade for Carter Hart because of his youth, because of his ability.
Yeah,
but if you're talking about a team like Buffalo, which I think desperately needs to add a goalie to play with Devin Levi, Hart or Connor Hellebuck, who's got a year left in his contract, would be the guys I would target. But you've got Gibson out there. You might have Vemelka from Arizona out there. You definitely have the free agents out there like Jari and Anderson and Ranta. It's a flooded market. And there's no doubt that it's a flood.
You're talking a whole different level there with all those guys. I mean, maybe except for Hellebuck. I mean, and honestly, you could put him at that level, but you're looking at the guy who's probably the Olympic Canadian goaltender in 2 years.
Well, I'll say this, Zach. If the report from our friend Shang Peng is true, that he had a source that the asking price from Philadelphia was 2 first-round picks for Carter Hart, then you're not getting that for Carter Hart. Because, I don't think – I mean, I love him. I mean, the thing you'd get him for 2 years, this year under $4 million. But maybe there are teams out there with more. Like if I'm Ottawa, I give up 2 first-round picks for Carter Hart. But the problem is they got burned a few years ago, giving up a lot of resources to get Matt Murray, and they may be gun shy. So,
Well, Edmonton has interest in him, for sure. I heard that.
Well, he's from Edmonton, and I would think
Campbell coming back in a trade.
No, I'd see Skinner coming back.
Maybe Skinner, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Why would Philadelphia take $5 million for 4 more years for a guy who last year proved he couldn't play? Last year. He's a good goaltender, but last year he proved.
I don't want to debate him.
I know, but I'm just telling you.
He didn't prove that.
Seattle 4 years, that's for sure. That's too much, even for.
No, it is a lot, no question about it. But what are the Flyers' goaltending needs going to be over the next couple of years? The reality is,
well, they're rebuilt. It's clear.
They got Cal Peterson, Eck. What are you worried about?
Yeah,
they got Cal Peterson, right? He already makes more money than they'd ever want to make.
Right, he's the gateway to the first overall pick. Just throw him there and let him
go. Actually, that's the bigger story here, by the way.
Yeah,
the story that Danny Briere said that I don't tank. I don't believe in tanking.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm going to tell you the biggest thing that we learned at the Combine, true or not, is that everybody believes the Flyers are tanking next year for Max Celebrini based on the moves they're making and the guys that they're getting. That's not me saying it. Mike and I heard this at least 5 to 6 times.
And I'm telling you right now, when a team right now in the position that the Flyers are in, and the rumors coming out that they've already traded Provorov, now they might be trading Carter Hart, and they're considering trading Scott Lawton. They're tanking. They're just not saying that they're tanking.
Well, they're considering trading Travis Konecny more than they are considering trading Scott Lawton, honestly, from what I've been talking to. But yeah, whether or not you consider that tanking or not, and Travis Sanheim's out there too. His name's out there too.
Yeah,
so
that contract is so long. The term is so bad on that. There's nobody's going to take it.
Maybe they'll trade him for Huberdeau.
That's the only way you could do it.
I don't know. Perhaps. Max Pacioretty's name is interesting too. Obviously, we've heard all kinds of things about Pacioretty. He's the second Achilles.
Yeah, that's tough.
I mean, I have him at 50% retiring on my chart, but I do.
Well, that's
I give you credit for
realistic.
creativity.
That's realistic, but okay. I would say here, veteran minimum contract, 1 year with Carolina or some other team to bring him back maybe at the middle of the year when he's fully rehabilitated. Take a chance, fine. Anything more than that, you're dreaming. You're not.
Big team with him is the Islanders, from what I've been told.
Yeah, okay.
The Islanders would like to do that kind of contract that you're talking about, Mike. And also Edmonton and Dallas are involved in that too. But and possibly Carolina, but I have Carolina.
It's crazy for the Islanders to do it, and I'll tell you why. I understand if Edmonton does it because they've got so many players. Like Pacioretty just literally needs to be able to skate,
right?
And they can get a lot of goals. You can't get Pacioretty for the Islanders and expect him to be a driver of offense anymore.
Right.
That's the problem. And they need a guy like him to drive the offense for like maybe a third line. And I don't think it's a good fit based on that.
Right. I do agree.
But I think if Edmonton, sure, you put him on an Edmonton second line or even third line with the guys they have, yeah, you might get something out of them.
Yeah. A couple other quick little hits from the rumor chart that I think are interesting. You guys can check it out on HockeyBuzz.com for sure. But I talked about Travis Konechny. Columbus has a big interest in. I was told Ottawa.
I could see that.
Konechny, which was surprising.
Really, because the 67s was his first team. He was really popular in that area.
Yeah,
definitely could see that.
Florida, perhaps. Florida's going to have some money this summer, so they're going to do some things. And then they have no
draft picks, but at least they'll have money.
They will have money, and the Predators are in that world as well. Matthew Dumba is a good one too.
Hold on. For Nashville, I don't see it because I still don't think he does enough that would make Trotz happy away from the puck. That's the only issue.
Okay. Matt Dumba is probably the biggest free agent defenseman out there. Yes. We were talking about him with various reporters saying, he could get $6.5, $7 million in free agency, depending on the bidding war. I honestly think that because I know that, again, I know Elliot was reporting on the weekend about Noah Hannafin. Mm-hmm. I just wrote about it. I think Noah Hannafin could be a target of Toronto because of Treliving, because of his relationship with Treliving, because of the fact he's got a year left. If he's not going to sign in Calgary, and a lot of these Calgary players, they have the year left. If they're not going to sign, Calgary's not going to let them do what happened with Gaudreau and walk to free agency. They're going to trade them. And, maybe some of and not just saying Toronto, because I'm sure Hannafin would draw a lot of interest from a number of teams. Teams will trade for him. They'll trade a decent amount for him. And then those teams will sign him to long-term extensions. That's what's going to happen. Dan B says Gudas, Mayfield, Dumba, off the top of my head, are three of the top free agent defensemen, and Gudas and Dumba are both, and Mayfield are all right-handed, which is going to elevate their cost. Yeah,
I mean, Gudas is definitely showing a lot right now. And he's become quite a celebrity in these Stanley Cup playoffs. It's pretty funny, having been around him for such a long time. Such a good guy and a fun guy to talk to.
What I used to like about Gudas was when he brought in his kid. This kid had these little Timberlands on. It was pretty funny. Like we used to look at him like a little mountain man, like his dad.
He's like way more well spoken than you'd ever expect him to be. Also,
he's a well-liked guy in the locker room. If you have Gudas on your team, he'll have your back.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Yeah, Gudas is the type of defenseman. Gudas and Mayfield are two of the defensemen that I would, if I was consulting the Sabres, I would go out and get. Now, I wouldn't overpay for them, but you put either one of them with a kid like Owen Power, and he'll be protected and he'll thrive. But, they're going to, Gudas is using the fact that he got to the Stanley Cup final. He's going to get a payday. He's going to get term, and he's going to get money. So, and Mayfield should too, because he's been underpaid with the Islanders for a number of years.
I know there's this belief, and I have to just say it. I know Islander fans, you believe that Mayfield's going to come back, but he is not going to take a low ball, natural low ball kind of deal from Lou. The market for defensemen has gone up so much as far as need that he is going to make probably more money than the Islanders ever care to pay for him, just because they've had him at a lower rate. I mean, what's really funny about Mayfield is, like, he's a really, really good defender, but he is really fit. Can add a little offense if you put him in a role that allows him a little more offensive zone time to get assists. He's not bereft of that. Like, I've covered this guy. Goes way back to the USHL at a tournament in Sioux City. Where's that? Iowa. Sioux City, Iowa. Saw him.
South Dakota.
No. Well, then it was somewhere else in Iowa, one of those cities. Anyhow, at any rate, I just think Mayfield now, after Dumba and after maybe another defenseman, he's going to end up being that next guy because of, he's not beat up. He's got size. He's got toughness. He's a.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Orlov's out there too. That's another one you have to remember.
Yeah, Orlov's a big name.
And he's probably this, in my opinion, right there with Dumba.
Yeah, probably. But there's a lot of talk of him going back to Washington. I just don't know whether that they traded him to get the asset and then he'll go back there. But
I've heard Vancouver is really interested in Dmitry Orlov, and I think that could be a possibility.
Which
you want to see Vancouver?
Yeah, what player though?
Dmitry Orlov.
I could see that. They're desperate for defense. So
yeah, and
he doesn't play that much defense.
And they have a sizable Russian contingent there. Yeah.
They do, but those are the two really the two big defensemen that you're gonna. I mean, there's a lot of little ones, but
I think what we'll have to look out for, and it starts, I believe, 48 or 72 hours after the Cup final ends. The buyout window opens, and I think with the cap probably going up at most $2 million. You're going to see more than the usual amount of buyouts. Like I said, Wheeler's a possibility. I think Matt Murray's going to get bought out in Toronto.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of other ones, and those guys they'll be entering the mix of the free agent pool because they'll take like Parise and Suter did after they got bought out by Minnesota. They'll take a 1 year, a 2 year deal at low amounts because they're getting paid from the buyouts.
Already getting Benny. Yeah, exactly. Agreed. All right, that is all.
And who will Matt Murray go to? You going to put him on the chart, Eck, when he gets bought out?
He's going to Pittsburgh.
Oh my. No. I don't know. Afraid of Matt Murray. Very, very afraid of Matt Murray. I haven't even put the Brinkat on the chart yet, and everybody's like, he's definitely moving, but I am not 100% convinced of that. So we'll see.
I can't say that yet because with an ownership group coming in, if the owner says, hey, we want to keep the Brinkat, go negotiate with them, they'll do it.
He might have already told them I'm not going to sign.
He might have, but he might not have.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, and everybody knows he wants to play for Detroit, but I don't know. The reality is like whether or not that'll happen or not.
Right. Yzerman may not want him.
I don't know that. I don't know that he's an Yzerman guy. Like, and now maybe he could go back to Chicago for sure and play now with maybe he was one of those guys who Chicago suddenly wants back. If this is the guy Connor Bedard, maybe he would be a good fit with him. I don't know, but Brinkhead's possible.
Listen,
Dadon's another one that's kind of we always talk about. He's like
with Connor Bedard. Look out, world! Seriously.
Yeah, really. So look that good, huh?
Oh, it would be unbelievable. Like that would be an unbelievable because you would have the ultimate playmaker with a tremendous goal scorer. Like, come on.
Yeah. There you go. And why not, right? So here we go. That's all the time we have for today. I do have rumors about Dadonov. We'll get to that as a teaser tomorrow, maybe. Because he's also entering that.
He's on court now.
He's entering the Hockey Buzz Hall of Fame for rumors shortly.
He's getting there.
He's really been at least the last 4 or 5 straight deadline type things he's been involved with. He's been traded and not traded.
Are you going to put out a top 10 list of that someday of the all-time?
I definitely will. Yeah, I definitely will.
Because I think that's worthy. I would like to see that because
there's some good ones. For sure. There are definitely some good ones.
The problem is Mike Sillinger started getting traded probably even before Hockey Buzz.
But he wasn't even good enough to always make the chart. You know what I mean? So he would be like one of those guys. He was like it's like you have to look at the guys like at the very top of the list, like the Matt Sundin who weren't traded, but were always in rumors.
Always on the chart. Oh, that's true.
Thomas Caberlet is one of those guys.
Caberlet's a biggie.
Forsberg definitely was definitely one of those guys for sure. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, definitely no question about it. All right, folks, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow. We'll set you up